Running with Maverick and Wolfman. Welcome back, guys. Today is our 10th episode.
So it was parent teacher night.
Yeah.
So I get there and I run into my buddy and he says, "Are you that guy with that podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm that guy with the podcast."
Hey, Tim. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
I want to start off by asking you, what's your fastest mile time?
4:28. I never had a whole lot of speed. That was the Millersville Miles.
Now, how did you get into running? Because you didn't run for a team, correct?
I did in high school. I ran all 4 years, cross country, indoor, outdoor. My older brother had started running in junior high, which in my world was 7th and 8th grade. Freshman year, you're not junior high, that's high school. I was pretty much the slowest kid on our team. I think my PR in high school for a mile was 5:12. And at that time in suburban Philadelphia, I mean, you had to run in the 4:30s to win a dual meet.
Wow.
My junior year, we won states.
Wow.
Our 2-mile relay had the second fastest time in the country that year. That was 1977. So that
A couple
was
years ago.
another time.
So it was a tough area to race in, basically.
Yeah, it was the Chestmont League, so Chester and Montgomery County.
So you dropped quite a bit of time then.
Didn't mature until I was in college. When I graduated high school, I was probably about 5'5", 125. And when I was racing well, I weighed about 150. Now I'm a little bit more than that.
Now, remind me, so when you went to college, you went to Temple.
I went to Temple. Coming out of high school, I didn't think I had any, hopes of running in college. Probably by my junior year, I could have walked on and been like a, scrub runner at Temple. Temple, especially at that time, wasn't exactly a powerhouse Division I program for middle or long distances.
Right. And what were you down to in your 5K?
My PR was a TAC certified course. That was before USATF. Was like 15, 16, I think.
It's good. Nice. Very good.
Good deal.
But you got a lot quicker over the years.
I did. I got involved in the local running scene and, got with a group that I ran with. I never really considered myself to be training. I just a recreational runner. I would go out and run. Never ran like any formal workouts or anything. Periodically, very infrequently, if I would meet up with guys and they would say, "Oh, we're going to the track," I would go and do whatever they were doing. But I just went out and ran pretty much 7 days a week. So I sort of break the mold of conventional, the conventional school of thought in today's world, where you should have hard and easy days, and this is a workout day, and then I'm going to have an easy day. I just went out and ran, but I came up in a time where high mileage was the thing. Like in high school, and you were supposed to be running a lot. You ran, and that's my history.
Imagine how fast you could run if you were in today's training model.
I often thought that. I wonder what back in the day I could have done if I had trained or been with a team. Yeah, because I raced everything from a mile to marathon. I always say I never ran a decent marathon, but slowest was my first one, 3:02. And then my second one was 2:49, and that was my fastest, which my times at shorter distance, it never translated. I always tell the story that year, so 1987, in the fall, at the Striders 20K, there was a runner back then, Mike Cohane, and we both ran like 1:07 low. He beat me by like 8 seconds or something. And he went to New York that year. I went to Marine Corps. And at that time, New York and Marine Corps were like the same weekend or a week apart. He ran 2:29. I ran 2:49. So that's why I say my times at shorter distances don't translate.
Sure.
Because he ran 20 minutes faster, like coming off the same 20K.
You just never know.
Yeah, probably because I walked in every marathon I ran. So
How much did you have to walk?
I would usually run the first 20 like under 2 hours, and then like struggle the last 10K. Now the last 10K is, I think a lot of people say it's the toughest, but like my 2:49, if I recall, and that was a lot of years ago, but I think my last 10K was like a 56-minute 10K. Like I was well under 2 hours at 20, and then ran a 56-minute 10K.
Sure. Sounds like you had a lot of room for improvement if you kept up with it.
Yeah, but once again, I always consider myself just a recreational runner. I was just living my life and going out and running, and it was my social outlet, and I enjoyed competing. In those years, you could race every weekend. You would run 2 races some weekends.
Wolfman, did you ever walk during a marathon?
Definitely some of these later ones, yes.
All right. I don't know. I haven't run one, so I'm just trying to figure this all out.
Yeah, I ran in 86, 87, 89, 90, and 91. When I was 31, that was my last marathon in 91.
They were all the Marine Corps?
My last one was New York.
Oh, okay.
So I ran like 302, 249, 252, 257, 255, or something like that.
Awesome.
Good times. Especially, like I said, since you're recreational, not really.
Well, I never felt like I was really prepared for a marathon. Like I would just do my normal thing and like add a long run. So it was like I didn't really increase mileage a whole lot except adding a long run on a weekend or whatever.
What would you say was your best race you ever ran in?
Like a specific race or distance? What do you...
Either.
There was a race they called the Legal Runaround. They only had it a couple years. The Bar Association ran it. And I always swore it was short, but they claimed they wheel measured it like multiple times and that it was a true 5 miles. And I ran 25:06. Now it was in the fall, right before the marathon. So I had, some miles, and I think my body fat at that time, as taken at the VA Medical Center kinesiology department, was under 10%, plus or minus 5%. So I was lean, I was fit, and so maybe I did run that fast, but that's one of the course records that I still have because the race no longer exists and no one ran faster than me.
Well, that's a forever record.
It's a forever record. Several of those out there. There's NPW 5K, the course record. And I even said in the paper a few times, I always felt like I recognized that I was a good local runner. Quotes in the paper like, well, the only reason I won today is because there was no one here that could beat me. Because there were like thousands and thousands of people out there that could run faster than me, but they weren't there. That's why I won.
Yeah, that's funny. What would you say was your worst race of all time?
Worst race. I don't. There's only one race that I ever dropped out of, and that was the Keystone State Games. But I had been sick the week before and tried to run, and then so I dropped out. So that was a bad race. And my first marathon was probably the most painful. One of my buddies was actually running backwards, like encouraging me to, come on, Tim, you can. But I still ran 3:02, which I guess is a respectable time, but in some people's eyes. At that time, I think the thing was that 1% of the population has run a marathon, and of that 1% of the people have run under 3 hours.
Wow.
All right, here it is. This one's for Wolfman because he loves this question. What is the weirdest thing you ever ate on a run?
The weirdest thing I ever ate on a run. Well, I ran in the years where fueling wasn't a thing. So like in training and stuff, and even like in a marathon, I never ate anything. You would just drink. And even in training, one of our long runs, I would meet up with a friend and we would run, and we would stop once in 20 miles. We would drink once. So I would like try to practice taking in fluid because I knew in the marathon you're supposed to drink. But really, I don't know that I ate in runs. But now in more recent years, since I've been cycling, there was a ride that we rode into New York and then stopped at a pancake breakfast like partway through. So, people don't think of eating a pancake breakfast partway through a 60 or some mile ride. But
Well, they do now.
Okay.
So when did you convert to cycling?
well, I raced from like 86 until 99 and then didn't run again. And then I made a little comeback back in like 2006, 2007, and was actually second in the Striders Triple Crown at that. I was like 46, 47 years old, but wasn't happy with how I was running. So just like stopped again. So probably about then, like 2007-ish, I think I started riding because I thought, well, my wife had gotten into cycling because she couldn't run anymore. She was headed to her first of two hip replacements. So she was riding, and I thought, well, I'll start to ride too. So I've been doing that since then. And when the pandemic hit, I rode every day in 2020, 2021 until June of 2022. I had to take a day off because we were flying to Scotland. This year, I'm really slack, and I probably have taken 10 days off, but I try to ride every day at least 30 miles.
Wow, that's great.
That's wild. Did you ever do a run streak?
My 63-year-old knees are starting to bug me, but
Have you ever done a running streak? Not streaking,
no,
running streak.
not really. Back in the day, I would, for the most part, run every day, but I didn't like keep track of. I would go out, like run Marine Corps, and then get up the next morning and go run the towpath, in DC. That wasn't a thing, taking days off to recuperate, at least in my book.
Now I think they recommend 5 to 7 days off after a marathon.
Something like that. But I've done the same thing. I used to take time off afterwards, and more recently, I'll run the day
Easy, like
2 days later. Yeah, just an easy run.
Just to keep moving. And I always, even though I had some success locally running, I never was confident. Like I would always feel like there was someone coming. I remember there was a race down in Beaver Meadows that I won a couple times. The one year I won by like over a minute, and I like was running scared the whole race, thinking someone was coming up on me, and like even training, thinking, oh, people see me, they think I'm probably look like I'm slow, and like I don't know why I always had that like thought, negative thinking in my head. But
I know what you mean, though. Sometimes I think it's natural to think that. I'll run at odd times just because there's going to be too many people in this area and they don't need to see
like
this.
if I try to make a little comeback, I'll like run after dark so no one sees me.
Exactly.
And now I did actually. I signed up for this Couch to 5K. It was only 3 days a week. Those were the only days I was running, and I was still riding every day and not having run in over 10 years. And I only know one way to run. So I would go out and run hard until I couldn't run it, and then run, walk. I ultimately just bagged the whole idea, decided I wasn't, unless I wanted to stop cycling and focus on running. I'm too impatient. But even with running at my age, I was able to get to 8 something per mile average, walking and running. So when I was running, I was moving along, but I can't sustain that. And I said, if I can't run under 19 and hopefully under 18, I'm not going to, it's not a race because I have sick thinking. I always say I don't want to compete with the other 63-year-olds. I want to compete. When I was running those couple years at like 46, 47, I ran 16:21. And I figured, well, my PR was 14 something. So now this many years later, I should, add another couple minutes on that. I should be able to run at least 18 mids But I don't know. That's not realistic, probably, but that's the way I think.
You mentioned your knees hurting. How were your knees in your 40s when you were running?
Okay, I had some hamstring issues because in all my years of running, I never stretched. I mean, in high school, you do the goofy stuff with the team, like the bobbing hamstring stretches and stuff, but I have never been good at stretching. One year after the 20K, there was a chiropractor there doing like massages or whatever. So I got on the table and he was like talking to me and said, asked me what I ran. And I told him, he said, there's no way you could run that fast. You're too tight. And I said, well, I do. And thank you. So I've always had hamstring issues. So when tried to make that little comeback, I started to get like pain from my hamstring, and my knees don't bother me on the bike, so that's the most important thing. But I just have like patellar tendon pain going down steps. That's it. So
It's interesting because there's kind of controversy over stretching versus not stretching.
And when to stretch, and
dynamic, yeah.
Right.
So I think it's based on the individual, but I usually advocate at least some stretching before and after. Wolfman, I know doesn't care for it too much, but
no, if something's a little sore, I might stretch it out. But I think the dynamic stuff and just the strengthening takes care of it.
Supposedly the tightness that you're getting is actually good for you to run faster, supposedly.
Right. It's all about knee lift.
What did they tell us in school? There's an optimal length. If it's too loose, is just as bad as being too tight.
Yeah, I think once again the individual comes into play. So if you looked at Tim back in the 80s, you might have said, well, we definitely want to work on the hamstring because that's a potential issue, but your gastrocs are good, quads are good. That's okay to be a little tight there. Keep running, and we'll just add a little stretching in after running or something.
In those years in my 20s and 30s, you're invincible. You just beat yourself up and you just keep going. I never had an injury that kept me from running. I would have like little like tweaks, but I would just run through it. And I was a kid.
Speaking of that, I remember I never had any major injuries in cross country or track, but I do remember one time I was running around the track doing a workout and I lost 2 spikes on the inside of my right spike. And I was like, well, it doesn't hurt that bad. I'll just keep doing it and it's not going to be that big of a deal. I just keep finishing the workout. So I ran the rest of the workout and I got done. I was like, wow, the inside of my calf is feeling a little tender. That's not too good. The next day I got up, I could barely walk on it. It was so inflamed and irritated. And remember, I go to the athletic trainer. I'd never been to the trainer in my life. And then I go, listen, I lost 2 spikes. It's inflamed. What kind of magic do you have so I can get back to running today? And they're like, well, let's put some heat on it. And I'm like, really?
Right.
That's what you want to do? You want to put heat on it? It's inflamed. They're like, yeah, no, let's put heat on it. I'm like, all right, whatever. These are the experts. So I put heat on it. It felt
Which
great.
Made it worse.
Well, and then initially it felt great. I was like, okay, yeah, I could probably get by running. So I go out, I run like a quarter mile, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 10 times worse. I can barely move now. And I go back to them and I said, listen, I tried it. I can't run. What else you got? They're like, oh, that's pretty much it. If you can't figure it out, that's all we got. So I took the day off, and literally just one day off with being the age that I was good to go the next day. It's crazy that is. Nowadays, I'd be out for like a week.
Yeah, it takes longer. The older you get, the longer it takes to bounce back from things.
I'm just figuring that out now.
So you asking me the strangest thing that I ever ate on a run. I want to tell you the story. The strangest thing that has happened to me on the bike is that last September 18th, I was found unconscious in the middle of the road, and I don't know what happened to me. Yeah, I have no memory of it. But the only thing I can figure is that a deer must have come out and hit me because I was, I went to the left to the middle of the road. I had very little road rash, fractured clavicle, and was knocked unconscious. But I have retrograde amnesia. Like I have no memory of anything happening until I woke up. And so there's my strange cycling story from just over a year ago. It was the 18th of September last year.
Huh.
But bouncing back, I was back on the trainer the day after I came home from the hospital. So because I'm out of my mind. And I had to be on the bike with my arm in a sling on the trainer, pedaling the bike 30 miles.
Oh,
It could have been
man.
a grouse.
That's pretty wild. Nobody saw what happened or anything.
No one saw, just a woman and her son came upon me and, called 911, but the bike
Wow.
wasn't damaged. It was like I was driven into the ground. So the only thing I can figure is a deer must have come out. I know other people who have been hit by deer on their bikes, gone down.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Wow.
So did you guys have an opinion of Strava? I love it and hate it.
Yeah, agreed.
Wait, what'd you say?
I said I love it and hate it.
Like
My-
meeting with everybody?
Well, my wife has this quote written on a piece of paper laying on our kitchen table in the past few weeks. It says, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And that's pretty much Strava, because
Yeah.
you see what other people are doing. Every day I see stuff. Oh, this guy, he rode 50 today. I mean, like, why? What does it matter? I'm not racing. I'm just riding supposedly for pleasure, but
Yeah.
comparison takes the joy out of it.
The temptation's there too, because they make those leaderboards and the segment leaders and things like that. So yeah,
Right.
it's tempting to try to. You see some of those names above you, and you're like, that shouldn't be there. I should be faster than that. And then I agree. I like it and I hate it at the same time.
And that's how the cycling streak actually started. In 2019, I had ridden 362 days or something, or 360 days. And one of my friends said, "Oh, that's great, Tim. Next year you should try to ride every day." And that put that in my head. And so not all of it's outside in the winter. I'm on a smart trainer, and then outside if it's nice on weekends or something. During the week, it gets dark pretty early, because even though I'm retired, I have worked part-time, and now I watch our grandson every day. So,
Congratulations on the grandchild, by the way.
oh, thank you.
I'm trying to convince my brother to get Strava because we want to compare, hold each other accountable that we're training, but he has
It's
not.
the thief of joy. Didn't you listen to what he just said?
Well, I shouldn't say compare. We want to hold each other accountable to train.
Right, so that he can't say, "Oh yeah, I was out," and
Yeah.
not really have been.
I've never used Strava, but it's funny because my wife's uncle told me that some kind of record that he had for years just got broken. So there's definitely a lot of that competitiveness
Yeah.
and comparison for sure.
Use it to rob myself of joy by comparing with other people.
Guys, we're running out of time, so I just want to say thank you, Tim, for joining us. We really appreciate it, and keep cycling.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
will. You guys keep running.
Maverick and Wolfman running out. Guys, remember to like and share on Facebook, follow on Instagram, support the show by clicking that little link that says support. Thank you for all those that have supported the show. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical healthcare advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the hosts or the management.